Om Shri Ram Jai Ram Jai Jai Ram. Om Shri Ram Jai Ram Jai Jai Ram. Om Shri Ram Jai Ram Jai Jai Ram. Victory to God, victory to the light. All blessings to you. God, Christ, Gurus. Speaking to you from the Borrego desert, and it's a lovely day here. I hope you're having a lovely day as well. From the posting today, we were all in different spaces. I continue typing my notes from Anandashram 20 years ago to the day. It has reminded me of my time there and the transformation I experienced. When it came to Mother's Mahasamadhi Day, coming up on the 31st, I had a very interesting thing happen that demonstrates how God works in mysterious ways, that even seemingly negative behavior by others can be an expression of His will. January 31st, Ram's play of grace through rudeness. Yesterday I sat in a very crowded darshan with Swamiji. Gabriel came in and I patted the only space open that happened to be next to me. Someone from the door wanted to pass a note through the crowded room and was looking at Gabriel to do it. This is a highly unusual thing to happen, but Gabriel, being a pure soul, immediately responded, got up and made his way forward with the note to Swamiji. It is to be noted that Gabriel has pain in his legs, which makes it sitting down on the floor and rising difficult. An American devotee came in and headed for Gabriel's spot. I signaled and said, "Gabriel is sitting here." He responded, "Well, I am now," and sat himself down. At first I had a flush of anger. Then came a resignation to God's will. When Gabriel returned, I got up and signaled that he should take my place on the floor. I reasoned that these visitors had few opportunities as I have had. For the darshan of this great saint, it felt good to give him my seat. There was literally no space left in the darshan room, so I left. When I returned to my room, I discovered a half-written fax to be sent for Mother's Mahasamadhi. The fax needed to be completed and taken to town for it to arrive in time for the Seattle group. Somehow the fax had slipped out of my mind, and I thank God for enacting the play at Swamiji's darshan so I could complete this important project for Mother. Today, the friend who took Gabriel's space came by. I don't suppose an explanation is necessary about yesterday, but here it is. An odd way to start, I thought. When I walked in for darshan, I was in one space. You said the spot was for Gabriel, and you were in another space. I wasn't thinking very quick, just intent on getting a place to sit. That was the space I was in. Gabriel, up with Swamiji, was in another space. Anyway, that is all how it happened. We were all just in different spaces. I think this was his way of apologizing. I assured him that it all worked out for good. This friendly response emboldened him to say that some Shakti must have been working through him. Satisfied now with his own explanation, he shifted on to other topics. I knew he would have something to say about the darshan seating incident, but this was such an interesting explanation. I could not have anticipated what he had said in a million years. On a human level, I could have made any number of observations about his explanation, but in the end, he was right. This was God's Shakti power working through him in the situation to maneuver me into completing my writing for Mother and still have time to take it into town and send it out to devotees. Jai Guru. This play of God's, is a fun reminder that no matter the appearances of a thing, God is at work. Sometimes we are in on the plan. Sometimes it is simply knowing there is a plan, and it is all being worked out according to his divine will. All is in his keeping. All is in his will. May he lift us into the awareness that his all-loving, all-knowing presence is with us, no matter what space we may be in or what mask he may wear. God is fun, isn't he? You never know what he's going to come up with next. This comes from Master's commentary on the Bhagavad Gita, Transcending the Three Gunas, chapter 14. The Blessed Lord said, "Again I speak with the highest wisdom which transcends all knowledge. With this wisdom, all sages at the end of life have attained the final perfection. Embracing this wisdom, established in my being, sages are not reborn even at the start of a new cycle of creation, nor are they troubled at the time of universal dissolution." Master's commentary. The fire of cosmic consciousness consumes all binding, stored up karma. Therefore, unlike ordinary persons, a self-realized sage, a Muni, who has dissolved from his mind all restless agitations of delusion, does not have to reincarnate. He has destroyed desires and their outcome of good and evil actions performed with attachment. Perfected beings who have attained salvation are one with spirit in the vibrationalist realm beyond creation. Such emancipated ones are freed not only from individual cycle of births and deaths, but are no longer involved in the macrocosmic cycles of the phenomenal vibratory worlds. Quote from the Gita continues, "My womb is the great Prakriti, Mahat Brahman, into which I deposit the seed of my intelligence. This is the cause of birth of all beings. Master, the divine or spirit is here proclaimed as Father, Mother of all phenomenal life. Mahat Brahman is the original first cause of creation, spirit as Mula Prakriti, the unmanifested differentiation of the Absolute. Mahat Brahman, or Great Prakriti, is the womb of primordial matter impregnated with the reflected intelligence of spirit, the seed of all future becomings. In its transcendental aspect, spirit is unified or uncreative, reflecting itself in the vibratory matrix of cosmic nature as Kutashta intelligence. Spirit then starts the work of creation. In unalloyed cosmic consciousness of unity, no creation or variety is possible. By bringing into being the activities, the cosmic storm of Prakriti or Maya, the delusive cosmic measure, God produces from his one ocean of formless infinitude the endless finite waves of creation. Verse 4 of the Gita, O son of Kunti, Arjuna, of all forms produced whatsoever wombs, great Prakriti is their original womb, and I am the seed imparting father. In a human sense, we consider the common parents of humanity to be Adam and Eve, or the first couple possessing other names in various scriptures. Ultimately, however, God the Father and his consort, Prakriti, impregnated with his intelligence to become the mother principle, are the primal parents of all forms and all life, whether animate or seemingly inanimate, whether angelic, demonic, human, animal, vegetable, or mineral. Verse 5, O mighty armed Arjuna, the gunas inherent in Prakriti, Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas, imprison in the body the imperishable dweller. I'm going to read that again. O mighty armed Arjuna, the gunas inherent in Prakriti, Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas, imprison in the body the imperishable dweller. Master, the three modes of nature, Sattva, purity, Rajas, passion, and Tamas, inertia, bewilder all these subjected to the limitations of a form. The perfect soul appears as the distorted ego when it is reflected in the agitated waters of human life, influenced by good, activating, and evil qualities of cosmic Prakriti. Verse 6, O sinless one, Arjuna, of these three gunas, the stainless Sattva gives enlightenment and health. Nevertheless, it binds man through attachment to happiness and attachment to knowledge. This is important because this is very high wisdom being taught here. Even that we aspire for in a spiritual sense, the sattva, the good, the pure, the uplifting, is in itself ultimately a trap. Now, this has to be understood correctly because as devotees, as sadhakas, we are trying to work towards having sattvic qualities in our life: calmness, purity, light, all of the things that we aspire for. But in that aspiring for these things, it is the human mind and the human self that aspires, that conceptualizes these concepts. And as long as it is attached to human intelligence and human desire, it will ultimately be a limiting thing that has to be transcended. So at one point we are utilizing the sattva, and the sattva is every bit all of the purity of God. But it gets mixed in with the human inside of us. And therefore it limits us. It attaches us to this body. And this is Master's commentary. Prakriti, or cosmic nature, is composed of the three gunas. Therefore, even the highest guna, sattva, is part of Maya, or the delusive force inherent in creation. Though a brilliant fetter, sattva is still a fetter. A gold wire can tie a man to a post just as securely as a wire of silver or steel. Like tamas, ignorance, and rajas, selfish activity, sattva also binds the soul to the body and to the earth plane. By its inherency in nature, rather than in the soul, sattva is powerless to free man from egotism, the root cause of rebirth. This stanza of the Gita explains why even good actions and virtues can keep man on the reincarnational wheel. The sattva qualities are themselves pure and untainted by delusion. Yet when a person relates happiness and wisdom to his own physical body and brain, his soul has identified itself with the human ego. Even a noble soul who thinks in terms of I in connection with his experiences of happiness or his acquisition of wisdom, I am happy, I am wise, is harboring selfish rather than selfless sentiments. Bliss and wisdom belong to the soul, but through delusion, the ego connects them with bodily enjoyments and intellectual knowledge. The ego considers happiness and knowledge to be its own qualities, thus ignorantly chaining the soul to bodies and rebirths. Through these, the ego experiences diluted and limited pleasures and knowledge, instead of realizing the unalloyed and infinite bliss and wisdom of the soul. This is so interesting because, as Mother would say, there is saint consciousness and then there is universal consciousness. Saint consciousness is wedded to the sattva, doing good works, leading a pure life, and so on. But even this is rooted in the human consciousness and has to be transcended. There are times, apparently, in the story of the Mahabharata where Krishna seems to go against the rules of Dharma. He instructs different ones to do things. He shoots somebody from a position that is not considered a fair thing to do in battle. And he urges other people to do things at times that seems to go against Dharma. That is because in his consciousness, he has risen above good and bad and is taking his direction directly from cosmic consciousness, which is something he is one with. So Mother also could operate on many different planes. And I know of some occasions when Mother actually guided people into doing something that normally she would not say was a good thing to do. And yet she knew for that soul's individual karma, it was the right thing for them to do. Now, this is not something that those of us operating in human egos can just arbitrarily start making up our own rules, because we will definitely pay a price for that. That is being done out of ego, not out of pure God consciousness. But we must hold out that there are times when truly realized masters will go against the rules. Now, we all perhaps know of situations in which supposed realized masters did things that were not dharmic. And in these cases that I'm thinking of now, they were not being guided by higher wisdom. They were being guided by their own lower natures and making an excuse saying that they had risen above the law. They can say that and people can believe it. But God is not fooled by somebody's words. God knows the truth of it. And when we go against that, and particularly when we have taken on a leadership role in the spiritual realms, and we betray that role, there is even more karma that is loaded up for such a one. So we need to be very careful with these teachings, but even knowing that these sattvic qualities are something to go beyond. And in that, we can then see the story that I told about this individual coming and apparently rudely just going ahead and taking the seat that was already reserved for another. And in hindsight, then, being able to see how God had used that individual, and it was his Shakti power. Now, the individual, whether his consciousness was acting purely out of that higher consciousness or not, nevertheless, God can use him and did use him in order to enact his play. So, this is something that we can rise above and see God is above all of duality. God is beyond being a good person. There's a time in my own sadhana in particular where God made me do the most difficult thing I've ever had to do, and it apparently went against the things that normally he would tell us to do. And I struggled with it. And I didn't want to do it. And when I told God I didn't want to do it, God said, "But you will get sick and you will die as a result." And I said, "I don't care." And he said, "That is not the right attitude. That is essentially killing yourself. And that it goes against a higher law." And it was a great going back and forth until I finally acceded to his request. And of course, now I can see where it was the right thing to do. But I was pretty invested and have been through my life of being the good guy, the person who didn't do harm to others or didn't go out of his way to hurt others. And I still don't. But when it's God's will, I will do as he directs me to do. I know there is times, especially early on with being with Mother, and I would test her. I would be across the room and I would say, "Mother, if you can hear my thoughts, then you should turn around and look at me." And she wouldn't do it, of course. And I know even from later my own experiences, I know people have expectations of me. They have desires of me. And I don't respond to them because God inside is telling me not to. And he's my boss. He is the one who arbitrates what I should be doing and what I should not be doing. And sometimes it even goes against some of my own opinions. I think perhaps I should be doing that. Isn't that what he wants me to do? And when I go inside, it's clearly no. I don't want you to do that. And I have to surrender myself. This is the sattvic inside of me who's battling against the omniscience of God. And I surrender that because I know in the end that he is the ultimate arbiter of what is good, of what is for the highest and the best in all people. Mother was such a tremendous soul, such a tremendous teacher. I have traveled around this world. I have been to see many of India's saints. And I can tell you, I've not met one greater. She is so tremendous. And she is so grounded. Master talked about Sri Yukteswar being grounded in earthly wisdom as well as heavenly. And it is true for Mother as well. She could advise people about jobs, about relationships, about family, about children, about negotiating your way through life, everything. And she could also articulate the highest, the purest wisdom known to mankind. She came with such a tremendous mission. She came to bring back original Christianity. I remember I took a class at the University of Washington on early Christianity, and the Professor Williams started out the class and said, we think of Christianity as starting with Jesus and the 12 disciples, and then there was the church, and there's just this smooth progression that came down in this way. Nothing could be furthest from the truth. That in reality, there were so many different kinds of practitioners of Christianity from the earliest days, different sects, different beliefs. There were those who did not believe that there was ever a physical incarnation of Jesus. It was all allegory, all story. Others who saw only pure mystical meaning. There are all of these various ones, and you might say, well, where's the evidence for this? And we have discovered more and more evidence as texts that have been hidden for 2,000 years suddenly come to the light of day. And we see that there are mystics living out in the desert who had widely varying ideas of what it meant to be a Christian. That the traditional formula for being a Christian didn't get formalized until nearly 300 years after the life of Jesus and the earliest disciples. And it was then coalesced into a cohesive theology. And it brooked no alternatives, no opposition. It destroyed books. It sometimes destroyed people, communities, anybody who insisted on following their own way. And so much was lost during that time. And perhaps today, traditional Christians would say, well, just the real Christianity won out. But who is to say? It was a highly politicized drama that played itself out in those days, and with great, great consequences, because the winners became the new state religion. And that's much of what has been passed down to us since. But we can tell through many different hints that original Christianity may have been very different. For instance, was Jesus himself a Christian? He never denounced being a Jew. He always honored the holidays. And so you might say that the originator of Christianity was never a part of his own religion. He was always a Jew and a follower of the Jewish faith. That's an interesting thing, isn't it? God just gave that to me. And so this is something that you have to really see with fresh eyes. You have to know that God is in operation through the Master Jesus, and that he said that God and his kingdom are to be found within you. Now, what in the world does that mean? Because if we were to think that Jesus Christ came as Lord and Savior, and through acceptance and belief in him, you have salvation. And then one day, in the near or the far future, there will be a second coming. Then being found within you doesn't make much sense to you. But when Master came, he brought a good share of that original Christianity with him, because he really focused in on God and the kingdom of heaven are within you is a reality, is the truth. And through deepened meditation, you might realize that truth. This is a whole new thing. It is no longer an article of belief, but it becomes an established fact based on your own experience. Let thine eye be single and thy whole body shall be filled with light. When Dr. Lewis first came to Master, he had that notion in his mind. What does this mean? Let thine eye be single and thy whole body shall be filled with light. A funny little error slipped into the transcription of one of Mother's talks early on. And it said, let thine eye, and it had a singular pronoun. It was I, myself, not the I, E-Y-E. But this eye that is found in the center of the forehead has been known for millennia in the East. And to see that eye is to see a great light. It's right at the center of your forehead, and in deepened meditation, you see that. But Dr. Lewis had not been taught that, and so he came to Master, and he said, what does this mean? And Master said, well, let me show you. And they sat down opposite each other. And Master leaned forward, and he put his forehead on Dr. Lewis's, and because Dr. Lewis was not an ordinary soul, he was an advanced soul already. And he saw that great spiritual eye there. And then he saw the Sahasrara, the crown chakra. He saw his whole brain lit up and filled with light. It's a tremendous experience. And this is what Master came to teach. God and the kingdom of heaven are to be found within you. And Mother took that. She took the lesson. She took the teachings. And she pursued it. Now, the type of life that she lived, she was never a Raja yogi in the way that some become deep, deep meditators. And her path was one of karma and bhakti, love of God and service of God. And so for years, she served her family. She meditated when she could, but she literally, there were times when she was getting 4 hours of sleep a night. And the rest time she was in service to her family, and by the time she laid her head down, she was out. And then she had to get back up and start taking care of things, of her family again, and getting ready and going to work. So she didn't have that time for prolonged meditations. Now, this is not excuse making, but there are people who have more affinity for service, and that is their primary path. But as I oftentimes say, we follow a fourfold path. There are four great pathways in yoga. That of the bhakti, love and devotion. That of the jnani, discriminative wisdom. That of karma, of action. There's one more, and I'm not sure which one I haven't mentioned. But we follow all four of these paths. And we take them and we make them our own. Now, we may have one that calls to us more than the other, but all four are equally in place. We actually need to use all four because we need that discriminative wisdom. We need that love and devotion to be the power behind things. We need to be in loving service. These are all things that we bring into our life. And if we balance these things, if we seek to have all of them in place, then God gives us the way in order to know Himself in truth. Now, as Mother followed the karma and the bhakti, she went further than many people do, but eventually God gave her the time to be able to go into deepened meditation. And she experienced Nirvikalpa Samadhi. And she was in the bliss of God and the upliftment of God, and He was revealing tremendous things to her history back into the very beginnings of creation, her first incarnation as a little droplet of water on a leaf. These were tremendous things. But any experience that begins and ends is still a limiting experience. You can say it's part of that sattvic because it's still wedded duality. You go in and you come out. You go up and then you come back down. The ultimate experience that we are looking for doesn't end. It doesn't take you into an experience and then you come out of that experience. It becomes something that is with you always. It is immovable. And no matter what happens to you in life, no matter what you go through, you absolutely know this presence of God within you. So this is a tremendous, tremendous vision. And it is what Jesus came to teach. It is what Master came to teach. It is what Mother came to demonstrate and to teach. And she did this with everything in her heart, in her mind, in her soul, with all of her strength. And we are asked to follow in her footsteps. And this we must do if we are to realize what she realized. Now, this does not mean that you will go through everything Mother went through. In fact, she assured us that we would not have to, because what she was doing was taking on world karma, and she was doing it for a whole world. And that is why the experiences she went through were so powerful, were so difficult. But we will not have to go through all of that. But there will be things we will go through. And when we do, we can remind ourselves, look at what Mother went through. And she made it. And as she would say, I, being just one little woman, if I can do it, you can do it too. She had such tremendous strength, such tremendous will. And yet her body was shaken. It went through paralysis, twice, complete paralysis. She went through so many things. She had a cyst, a tumor that was in her ovaries that was as big as a grapefruit. Master healed it. She had tuberculosis. Master healed that as well. But she had to go through the symptoms first. She had poverty. She had 3 children and a husband with no arms that she supported, and it was during the Depression. And she was able to do it somehow. And she said that she even had to stand in bread lines at sometimes. And it was a tremendously difficult thing for her. She is a very proud woman. That's not something that came naturally to her at all. And We lost connection, and I think we have it back again. Thank you for holding on.
So I lost it. David talking about mother and bread lines. That's what Angela said.
So as I was saying, mother was standing in bread lines. But she came through all of these things. You know, it's a thing that we can take inspiration from. Because whatever mother went through, she could identify, and she could, with what we're going through. She said she went through everything that a woman in life can go through. And yet, look at where she rose to. So oftentimes, we look back on people, perhaps people in historical contexts, and we see their story as a fait accompli, as if there is no room for them to fail. It's an interesting question. Could Jesus have failed in his mission? We wouldn't know about his life today if he did. Could he have succumbed to temptation? Could he have done something that would have taken him out of the role that he was destined to play? And we would have to say that is possible. He had free will. As Mother said, when she got to a certain point in development, she was asking God, what is your will for me? And she got a very interesting response back from God. God said, my will is your will. So she had it dumped right back into her lap again. Because she had merged herself so completely, so totally into God consciousness, that God's will and her will were now being expressed as one thing. And that is a tremendous state of development to get to. She had gone beyond the tamas, the depressive aspect. She had gone beyond the rajas, the activating aspect. And she had even gone beyond the sattvic, the purity. One time she was talking to a saint, and in Mother's great sense of humor, she said, God had quite a sense of ego that day. His mother was talking about herself to the saint. And at some point, the saint pronamed to Mother and said, Mother, we must remember to have humility. And Mother was there to take him beyond that saint consciousness, beyond that sattvic consciousness. And Mother said, Swami, what true humility is total surrender to God. And because this is the way that God is speaking through me, I'm totally surrendered to him. That is true humility. It is not an act of humility. Mother said that she had seen people trying to act humble, and she didn't like it much. I remember when I was at the ashram, and there was one lady there, very sweet lady, but she always made sure she was the last one in the flower ceremony. The last one, and if somebody else came in late, she made sure that they got in front of her. And I know she was doing it as an act of humility. But think of how much energy, how much conscious awareness that took from her in order to make sure that she was the last person to be there. It takes a calculating mind to do that. That is an attempt to be sattvic. But it is not total attunement with God. Total attunement with God is as you approach the Swami and he hands you the flowers, you're conscious of the gift that's being given to you. And then as you go in and you deposit those flowers up on the altar, you're giving everything in yourself to God. That's what you're filled with. And you don't know if you were first or last or middle. It makes no difference. And this is the kind of humility Mother had. She could be powerful. She could put herself at the front and speak the truth like no one else. And she could also be in humble garb, as the Gita says, lost in the common life. Not lost in the common life as just simply a common person, but you're unidentifiable. You're just one of the crowd. But, as the Gita continues, a yogi yakt, a completely free being in union with God. This is the kind of attainment our Guru attained. And it's something that she is pointing the way for us. You know, it's so common in organizations and in movements to look back and see the ideal in the leader. And this is how it should be. Swami Satchidananda said that every disciple sees their guru as the greatest, and that's how it should be. But we should not become exclusionary. It's too easy to put the guru up onto a pedestal and worship him and have him beyond everything that is human. As Mother assured us, she is both totally human and divine. This is a difficult concept for the mind because it's wedded to dualism, to I and thou. God is pure. I know who I am. And it's not that. God is perfect and I am not perfect. And yet Jesus said, be ye perfect, even as your Father in heaven is perfect. This is quite a challenge, isn't it? How can I be perfect? In a human sense, you cannot be. But when you touch the fabric that is God, that fabric is perfect. And it conveys that perfection into you. It awakens it in you. You realize it. It is the total purity, the total upliftment, the total joy that is God. And in that touch, you are perfected. Now, that's not by ego calculation. That would be that sattvic, that would be that human connection to perfection. Rather, you are perfected through grace. And that perfection now shines out through you in all that you do, even if you make a so-called mistake. It is God who is acting through you. Mother said that Master spoke the most beautiful King's English, or beautiful English. And then sometimes he just absolutely murdered the King's English. But she said, even when he seemingly misspoke, oftentimes it seemed to hold specific meaning. So it makes you rethink whether you should go back through and clean up every little thing that Master said. You know, there's so much in the heavy-handed editing that goes on with his words. And it's unnecessary. So much of it reads beautifully. It's that the editor has a different style and they want to remake Master into their own image. And it's wrong. True, Master needed editor. Every writer does. But you should always leave the voice of the author alone, recognizable. And that they did not do. So many of his works now read like textbooks, and Master did not talk like a textbook. He did not write like a textbook. He was interesting. He was funny. He was poetic. He was passionate. And they've tried to make him into something else. I do not know why. For the life of me, I do not know why. But always and forever we are being called, get your own God realization. Master said, you cannot get Yogananda realization. Besides, I killed that fellow a long time ago. And it's true. You have to get your own God realization. Just simply mimicking somebody, instituting some kind of a program that can become dead and stayed is not it. It's becoming alive with the creative intelligence that has gone into making this entire universe. Imagine the vastness of this universe, the beauty and the intelligence that we see all around us in nature, in the human body. It is so tremendous. God is the greatest physicist, the greatest biologist, the greatest anythingist that you can ever possibly imagine. A scientist can spend his entire life studying one tiny aspect, one tiny element of God's creation, and never understand it all. That's the kind of intelligence that you're tapping into. God's intelligence. And His love, His mirth, His play, His love. It's all beyond anything that a human can manufacture. And yet, we can touch in with it. Mother came to give that original Christianity to all of us. And if any of us are wise, we will take it, we will grab it, we will run with it. And not just learn to parrot the truths that she taught, but to embody them, to become them. To become one with our Heavenly Father, to discover God and His kingdom of heaven are within you. This is such a tremendous thing, such a tremendous thing. So let us embrace it now. Let us feel the love and the grace of Mother, her beauty, her upliftment, her enjoyment of life. Let all of it become ours as a gift from her, as a thing that she so much wants for all of us. To know God and to be one with Him. And then to serve this world in that rarefied God consciousness until all of this world is lifted up and perfected by touching the fabric of God. Jai Guru, victory to Mother. May you receive her blessings and make special attention over these next days to be focused upon her, reading her words, thinking on her, meditating on her. Because as you, through your openness of mind, make connection with her, her grace manifests in you and will take you on to a journey that you can scarce believe in your good luck, in your good fortune, that the fabric of her being has touched you. Om Shri Ram, Shri Ram, Shri Ram.